Little did I know eating that little piece of raw chicken was going to change the course of my life. But it only lasted for him for that 10 days. And for me, it just kept going. It's not the food, it's how our gut is functioning. Rest is so productive.
Hi, my name is Thrishi. Thank you so much for your precious time in watching this amazing conversation. I wanted to tell you real quick why I started this thing called the BioBelly Show. My best friend Ankit was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis around the peak of the pandemic. And I felt he did not know how it is to find root cause healing and how to find a long-term solution for his issues. Once I figured that out and I saw an intelligent person like him going through a vicious cycle of crippling symptoms that are changing his overall lifestyle and his relationship with food and his relationship with movement, I realized that the most important thing I can do is become a bridge to serve people with information on how it is we can bring root cause healing to the world, right? And look, with gut issues, it's so weird because the gut is the central part of our whole body, right? And so disease always starts with a small dysfunction with the gut, as far as I am learning, right? So my goal for this podcast is to speak with every single gut healer that I can, right? Whether that's a naturopath, whether that's a gastroenterologist, whether that's an IBS dietitian, whether that's a CBT expert, whether that's an EDMR specialist, whether that's a gut hypnotherapist. Basically, I want to speak with everyone who heals guts because I want to make it very accessible how it is our body works, how it is we can get long-term relief, and how it is we should optimally live for an optimized gut, thereby having an optimized health. And I really hope you enjoy this conversation. If it serves you, please like and subscribe because it does support us and show us that our dream is coming true and we're actually healing guts for a living. So without further ado, let's hop into the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another amazing conversation at the BioBelly Show. Today's guest is Bella, a clinical nutritionist who has built a beautiful space for women to understand their bodies and heal their gut without extremes. She has this calm, grounded way of breaking down gut health, hormones, fertility, and stress so they actually make sense in real life. Her work is all about sustainable wellness, not restriction, not fear, nor quick fixes. Bella helps women reconnect with their gut, improve their motility, support their hormones, and feel nourished again through simple, evidence-based steps. You see it throughout her content. She brings compassion, clarity, and a lot of honesty to the conversation. From bloating to navigating fertility to navigating stress, she empowers women to trust their bodies and make changes they can actually stick to. I am super excited for this conversation as Bella is going to bring both knowledge and heart, and I'm sure you're going to feel that right away. Bella, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for that amazing introduction. I feel so honored.
Well, honors all mine. Bella, I'd love to kick it off with learning a little bit more about you, learning about what prompted you to pursue this beautiful career of healing people for a living.
Okay, well, I actually think I fall into a very stereotypical reason why, but I came from my own gut health issues, dating back probably now 10 years. I was in Morocco with my partner and we were living our best life. We did a little Sahara retreat in the desert, and we got given raw chicken. And that night, it's funny when I think back on it, because little did I know eating that little piece of raw chicken was going to change the course of my life, but it did. Because after that, we got the most intense salmonella. And and that was just, we were only just dating at the time. We're now married, but we were just dating at the time. So we were like, what is going on? We're just exploding everywhere. And had to get 2 bathrooms, and it was just awful. But for my partner, it only really lasted for him for, well, it was 10 days of like full on sickness. But it only lasted for him for that 10 days. And for me, it just kept going. And I started experiencing, and I see this so much in clinic as well. Like a lot of people say that they had one bout of like sickness or something, and then they just like never felt the same. And so I kind of had a similar experience, and was just had all these intolerances. I was, at the time I was like in a share house. I was eating in my room because I just like had to eat different food, and I was so scared about like the reactions that I was going to get. And then I was constantly on these really restrictive elimination diets and things to experiment with trying to fix my gut. And I hope that this resonates with some people, because I feel like when, it really can control your life, you are willing to do anything. And if that means that you need to cut out all of these foods to make yourself feel better, you will do that. But along the way, it can be really limiting, because you're not able to, be social. And it's like food is something that is there to be shared amongst like almost every culture. It's this way to connect. And it's like our biology is altered that way, so that when we do share food with people, our digestions work better. So that was a huge component for me. And I feel like maybe I did that for about 5 or 6 years. I went and saw every practitioner under the sun, and all of them were giving me these protocols and these supplement protocols or diet protocols, and like really intense. Like I had shakes, I had like only like 2 spears of asparagus for 5 days, and I tried everything and nothing really worked. And so I think that's what propelled me to start studying it myself, because I'd invested so much time. And now that I'm in clinic, I see a lot of clients as well who are literally, they're so intelligent and wise. They know so much about gut health. That's not everyone, but a lot of them do, because they've spent so long trying to understand what is going on with me and my body, and why is this happening to me. And so, yeah, I kind of propelled me to go on and do my own studies. And that's kind of what led me to this. Along the way, I started really practicing meditation. So I'm also a mindfulness meditation teacher. I'm a Pilates instructor. So kind of wove all of those things into play. And that is really when I started to understand truly what we needed to support our guts. And it is so much more than just gut health. I think when in the beginning and I started practicing, I was really focused on gut health. Then I started to realize it's not just your gut, it's your hormones, it's your sleep, it's your stress, it's the way that we live our lives. And the way that we live our lives can have a direct impact on our guts. And I think that was really transformative to me. And that really, really, really empowered me to want to share that with other people, because nothing lights me up now more than people who have had severe bloating or chronic constipation or diarrhea, and they can never leave the house, to being able to get their lives back, like go out with their friends and not have to worry about if that food's going to cause a reaction, to be able to eat it and just enjoy like their life again and reclaim their lives back. Like it's really fulfilling, because for me that transformed. I feel like I got my life back when that happened for me. So I feel like that's kind of where my drive is. And I feel really grateful that I did get salmonella all that time ago, because I'm following a career that really fills me up. And it's so satisfying. And just in today's society, is so go. And we have lost sight of the foundations of nutrition and like basic health it's hard. Sometimes it's really hard. We're time poor to fit these things in that can actually be incredibly important to getting us to improve our health. So yeah, that's kind of why I ended up where I am.
Love it, love it. If we can go back and unpack a little bit of the origin of this beautiful journey, right? Like that time where you did get salmonella, and your partner was able to heal, bounce back in 10 days, but it wasn't the same for you. Was there anything that we took at that time, maybe like an antibiotic or something to get rid of that you think might have triggered that long-term domino effect of maybe those food intolerances that we were talking about?
I actually think that's a great question. I think it is very complex. I think there's a lot of things interplaying with that. I think that he actually did take antibiotics. I was like, no, I'm going to let my body do its thing, which is so interesting because there really is a place for modern medicine in that sense. Because perhaps maybe if I took that, it would help. Not to say he's not perfect now. He still has IBS symptoms. It just wasn't as intense for him as it was for me. But his gut has never been the same as well, may I add. But compared to me, it didn't impact his life as much. So yes, he took the antibiotics. And I think that also, I was always predisposed to gut issues. And I think that's also a really important thing to note. Like I always was experiencing constipation since I was a child. And I do see this a lot in clinic as well, because, it does stem all the way back from childhood as well. And so it can make us more susceptible to those things. So yeah, I think there's a lot of other aspects to it that maybe aggravated my symptoms. And nervous system, like my mind, like my mental health was obviously I didn't have tools in place at the time to manage anxiety or depression or any of those kind of things. So I think that really exacerbated all of my symptoms because I wasn't able to manage how I responded to the stresses that were going on for me physically. And so that's also something I like to integrate into my practice, because it's not just about let's look at all the nutrients and the things. How are you actually feeling? And how does that feel in your body? Because that can also impact our guts and our capability to heal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would love if we can unpack that a little bit. Like the process that you take, I think it's super interesting, right? Because it's, I believe it's just a sigh of relief when someone probably meets you after not having promising results working with maybe someone in the conventional medicine space, like a gastroenterologist. Sometimes they are prescribed certain medications with the intention of, okay, this is gonna numb your symptoms, right? But the fact that you have this root cause approach and looking at it not just in the food you eat, but also, and not just the gut, but the mind gut connection. It's really awesome to see that. What does that process look like where a person walks through your door, says, Bella, I have tons of gut issues. I have a migraine, hives, bunch of stuff. What does that process look like when you're trying to maybe intake and trying to understand what that root cause could be?
Yeah, well, very interesting. And I think that takes a very long case analysis and also a bit of a zoom out. So I feel like the way that we practice as nutritionists is not just looking, for one, I will never ask them just about their symptoms. I think if you go and see a conventional medicine practitioner, they will ask you just about what's going on symptom-wise and how can we address those symptoms. But for us, we will ask, okay, well, when did these symptoms start? And at that time when they started, what was going on in your life? And how were you feeling? And have you always had gut issues, or has this just been happening in the last year? And from that time when it started to now, what's been going on in your life? Because all of those things are multifactorial that can impact our symptoms. So I'm kind of like a zoom out. Let's look at the whole picture, not just your, and then obviously look at all of those other symptoms that are going on. But it's really important to know what, like, the timeline of all of this happening, because I would say 90% of the time, even more, these symptoms have come from like a trigger point or something that's happened in their lives. And sometimes it's stress, sometimes it's antibiotic use, sometimes it's a bout of illness or whatever. But we can always figure out exactly where that came from. And that is kind of where we can draw some conclusions of the why behind, what, like, where your symptoms are at now. And yeah, interesting that you were saying that as well, because they can really manifest in different parts of the body. Like, our gut is like a control center for almost all systems in the body. So like our nervous system, like, is 90% of our serotonin is made in our gut. We have hormones that are regulated and created, like estrogen, in our guts. So yeah, we can't look at those things in isolation, because they could probably be a direct cause of other symptoms that are going on in your body as well.
That's super interesting. It makes me think that, like, along with being a nutritionist, it kind of gives you the responsibility of being a bit of a detective, right? Because you're trying to understand everything. Like, what has your life look like? Like,
Yeah.
it's which is super interesting. It's like, I guess a great way to understand the process is, if, Bella, you had to speak with yourself 10 years ago, and you were able to give that Bella advice, right? She just came from the trip from Morocco. How would that process look, where you could hopefully get her to having more freedom in terms of, like, less restriction with the food intolerances, and just more, just a better, healthier gut, better, healthier overall outlook, mentally and physically?
So interesting, because I feel like a lot of, and I find this is quite common in women as well, is there is a lot, I don't see it much, I do sometimes, but most women have a bit of a broken relationship to food. Like, prior to, even if they have got issues or not, there is a broken relationship to food. They look at food as, like, too many calories, or reducing your carbohydrates, or, they don't want to gain weight. And they're not looking at food as like this nutrient thing that's going to give them energy, and that's going to support their hormones, and it's going to make them literally feel better mentally, and feel like they've got a higher libido, and maybe they feel more sexy, and they, like, have more energy for life. Like, those things are thought about a lot. I feel like we're always looking at food and thinking, oh, is that going to make me fat? Or, like, is that going to make me really bloated and not look good? Like, really concerned about our physical appearance. And I feel like for me, that was a huge component of where I started to restrict, and came into these, like, mindset of, like, oh, well, I've got to cut this out, and I've got to get rid of this. And then that kind of propelled, like, I wasn't really intensely, but disordered eating, in the sense where I was really controlling what I was eating, and making sure that everything that I was eating wasn't, like, going to make me gain weight or cause a reaction. And so there was a big control picture around it. And I think that what was so empowering for me, and if I was to strip all the way back and give myself some advice 10 years ago, it would be to give myself some kindness. That actually took a really long time. But to give myself grace, and to understand that rest is so productive, was probably 50% of my healing journey, was to give myself time to rest, give myself grace, and, like, know that healing takes time when we rest, not when we're doing. Like, we need to give the body a chance to be able to heal, which we need is rest. And also just and this is what I love teaching my clients, is them understanding what these nutrients are doing in our body and how they support us, like how protein can actually help us regulate our hormones and give us energy and stabilize our blood sugar levels so that we don't get an energy crash in the afternoon and we don't get moody, and maybe we don't get PMS symptoms and bloating and all of those things in the lead up. And how carbohydrates literally fuel our brain. We need carbohydrates to think, for cognitive processing. So it's like understanding what all of these nutrients do, as opposed to just like lumping them all together as calories and just saying, oh, yeah, you only want this amount of calories, because it's just not, that's like, nutrients are healing for our guts and for our minds and like everything. They're literally how we function. Like, it's not just food gives us energy. Food literally does, it supports all the systems in the body when we're giving ourselves the right nutrients. So it can be such a huge part of our healing journey. And if we're depriving ourselves of all these nutrients, we're not giving the body its a chance to heal. So, and this is what I say a lot when you kind of were talking before about like restrictive protocols and stuff, and my approach, I'm just so against that now these days, because I do not find it very successful in most clients, especially my clientele. But maybe some clients do find it helpful. But restrictive, like food, like diets, like the low FODMAP diet or the SIBO biphasic diet and all of those kind of things, they put so much stress on our minds and our bodies, and we're not actually fueling ourselves with the nutrients that we need. So yeah, I would say educate myself on the nutrients, rest, give myself some grace, and yeah, try and find ways to love yourself and to find ways that really you're giving yourself permission to actually just relax, which I don't feel like, and again, this might be my clientele, but most of us don't even know how to rest. It's like, oh yeah, I'm resting. I'm doom scrolling while I'm watching TV. It's like, that's not really resting. You're still keeping your mind very active by doing that.
Absolutely. And, I'm going to touch on rest because that's super important. I'd love to learn from you. Moving on to the flip side of restrictive diets, something that's related, which is fasting. Recently, there's been a lot of great, a lot of support through, social media, saying that fasting is great, right? That there's this idea that you're basically letting your body repair and rest and not have to work. How does that play in with this idea of staying fueled, making sure we are properly nourishing our body so it is optimized?
I love this. And I think that, I don't know if you've heard of the migrating motor complex. Yeah, so I'm sure you're across it, but for anyone who's listening and doesn't understand what the migrating motor complex is, it's these muscle contractions, these wave-like muscle contractions that happen when we're not eating. And they sweep out any excess bacteria or toxins in the body, which like we obviously need. It's like a detoxification kind of thing that's happening there. And it only happens when we're not eating. And we need to allow for about 2 or 3 hours for that to kind of kick in. And so I do really see there is a space for making sure that we are meal spacing, especially when there are gut issues at play. But there are so many other factors to think of as well. Like, how stressed are you? Because it is, if your cortisol levels are already elevated and you're putting more stress on your body, that's going to drive inflammation. That's going to drive gut dysbiosis. That's going to drive inflammatory conditions. It's going to have a counter effect there. So I think that I'm just not really pro it for women. I think I don't know a whole lot about men, if I'm completely honest, in this space, because I have a lot of a focus on women. That's my clientele. But for women, I feel like, especially menstruating women, It can be it can cause a lot of inflammation in the body, and it can also really disrupt that hormonal regulation. So I think that maybe allowing 3 to 5 hours between each meal can be super powerful and really healing, but it really does depend on our mindset and our stress levels. Just to really simplify it, those two things are, there's a lot of other factors, but I'm rarely ever recommending it. And I'm not completely off it, but I don't think I would recommend it for most people, because I actually don't know if that's the thing that's going to really support healing.
Got it. Got it. And one thing you were talking about earlier, Bella, was this idea of food intolerances, right? It's again one thing that I'm learning a little bit more about slowly. What I wanted to ask was, when a client comes to you and says, I have these food intolerances, if I eat this, that usually doesn't react with my body very well. My gut does not feel very good. When do we know that a food is one that we should restrict, like we should take out of our normal eating altogether, or something that we have to build the resilience to start eating more and more?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question and comes up so much with clients, because sometimes they'll be like, oh, no, I'm allergic to, pineapples. I can't eat them because every time I do, I get bloated. And I'm like, that's really interesting, because I don't think it's most of the time. I'd say 90% of the time, there is that 10% time where people actually do have an allergy or an intolerance to a food. But most of the time, it's not it's the way that our gut is functioning. So it's not the food itself. And a good way to understand whether or not that might be you is if, when you go on holiday, you have zero food reactions, or it's that your food reactions keep changing. So every kind of couple of months, maybe you're eating something and you're really reactive to it, and then you eat it again, not so reactive. And then something else causes a reaction. When we're getting when we're getting those symptom patterns, that shows us that, okay, it's not the food. It's how your gut is breaking down that food. So when I'm speaking to a client, I will ask a lot of questions around their gut functioning to understand whether or not it is motility, which is our digestion, whether or not it's stomach acid production. Are we making enough? Are we creating enough like stomach juices or digestive enzymes to break down those foods? Like how regular are we having a bowel motion? Like, is it every day? Is it 5 times a day? Or have we got hypermotility when things move too quickly, or hypomotility when things are moving really slowly? Because all of those things can affect the way that we respond to food. And it's not the food, it's how our gut is functioning. And that tends to be the root cause. So when we understand a little bit more about, well, how is the gut functioning and why is the gut functioning like that, that can be such a huge insight. That can also often be your root cause. Like how well are you digesting foods, those kind of things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see that time and time again, Bella. It's like these root causes. Like you have this one that's like just lack of digestive enzymes, right? And there's one that's, as you said, like maybe low stomach acid. And then there's one that just might be like straight up like dysbiosis, where there is too much pathogenic bacteria, maybe not as much good bacteria, and that might be leading to whether it's like the more increased permeability of the gut lining, or just altogether overgrowth, right? Of pathogenic bacteria. Super interesting stuff. When we understand what the root cause could be and what the issue is, right? For example, if you're speaking to a client, you kind of get a better idea of what their issue could be. How does the solution phase look? Like, what is your usual process, and maybe presenting new diet ideas, or antimicrobial ideas, or just overall that regimen that a client should take for optimized recovery of their gut health?
Mhm. I think that no one client is the same. And I think that that's really important to me, that and I really try and kind of share that a lot on my like social media platforms as well, that like we should not be taking generic advice because everyone's microbiomes is so unique. And as we were talking about before, it comes from childhood, and it's from that point on and then onto our lives affects the way that our guts are functioning. So when we take these generic protocols and restrictive diets and things like that, that I've even experimented so much with in the past, it doesn't work because you're not specifically addressing what is going on for you. But I understand that obviously not everyone has access to a practitioner and things like that. So I think like there are some really general things that can be really useful as a general tool guide. But if these don't work for you, then I feel like that's when you need to kind of explore that a little further with testing and things like that. But some things that I always give my clients that I feel like would help or be supportive for anyone that's going through anything with digestive issues is making sure that you have enough fiber in your diet. And fiber is found in fruit and vegetables and is so incredibly important for our digestive processes. It also helps with hormonal regulation. It stabilizes our blood sugar levels throughout the day. It helps with our energy. But yeah, most importantly, if we're talking about gut health, it feeds up beneficial bacteria. It helps with our gut permeability, everything like that. And some people who are experiencing gut issues might think, oh, okay, I need to eat heaps of fiber, and they just go ahead and smash heaps. And that can cause a lot of bloating and a lot of distension and a lot of gut issues. So I would say low and slow, but always trying to get up to 30 grams to 40 grams a day is super important. And now that we have ChatGPT, I'm like, go ahead and write out everything you've eaten in one day, chuck it into ChatGPT, so easy. Ask them, like, how many grams of fiber is this approximately? And it'll take you a second and you'll have a little bit of an understanding of like how much fiber you're eating and how much that you really want to get to. Because even if you've got diarrhea or constipation, both of those things, it's going to be supportive to make sure that you're having enough fiber. And one that I think, I'm in Australia, so I'm pretty sure it's like 70 to 80% of Australians do not meet the fiber requirements daily. So I don't know about America. I'm sure it's something somewhat similar. And so it's such an important one, and one that's overlooked because it seems so simple. And warm, well-cooked foods. So if you're someone who's experiencing digestive issues, you've got bloating, you've got pain, you've got constipation, diarrhea, you've got food reactivities, eat warm, mushy foods. Imagine that everything that your body is trying to break down, like right now, your gut might be compromised. So make it easy for your gut to be able to absorb those nutrients and take the effort out of the digestive process that might be compromised right now. So make sure everything's really warm and like almost a mushy-like texture. If you're really experiencing a flare-up, stick to things like soups and mushy foods. And go slow with the fiber. Just mushy, warm, slow. And then my third one would be, are you drinking enough water? Really, another simple one, but another one that's overlooked. We need 2 to 3 liters of water a day. It helps us flush out our toxins. It helps with our digestion. Seriously, sometimes people are just constipated and they're experiencing severe chronic constipation, and it's not going to solve all their gut issues, but it could seriously improve their constipation if they just were making sure that 2 liters of water was a part of their regimen every single day.
Absolutely. I wanted to, if we backtrack, and you were talking about how the mind-gut connection is one that is something that is definitely a part of the conversation of gut healing. I find it super interesting that you, along with becoming a healer, you also pursued coaching, like when it comes to meditation. May I ask, how has meditation helped in your life, whether it's in your gut healing or just overall life in general? And have you seen that it does bring success in your clients' gut health improvement journey?
100%. I think it was so transformative to me for I now meditate maybe 20 minutes a day, 20, 30 minutes a day, and it changed everything for me because like we were talking about at the beginning, it's about when you wake up in the morning, what are you doing? Like, ask yourself, are you someone who rolls out of bed and you are go, you are on, like you got your clothes on, you're running out the door, you're going to exercise and you're going to run to work, and then, you're eating late at your desk. All of those kind of things are going to impact your digestive functioning. And for me, I was doing all of those things and it like, and the thing is maybe this is the case with a lot of other people because I feel like they do. So a lot of people know, they're aware that they are on the go kind of person and they are quite stressed. But in order to actually just like slow down, it can be really challenging. And I think that meditation allowed to give me that pause. Sometimes like, I'm not perfect. It's not like every day I can do 20, 30 minutes. Sometimes I can only do 2 minutes. Sometimes it's just a matter of me rolling out of bed and taking 2 deep breaths and then starting my day instead of, going. And it's those small little pauses in the day that help me reconnect to my body, help me activate that parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest, give my body the chance to heal. Because when we are doing that, even when we're eating, and we're eating in that way, that's like our body is not primed to eat like when we're in a rush. So that's when we get low stomach acid. That's when we compromise our digestive enzymes. That's when we get the bloating. That's when we can get all the food intolerances and the distension and all of those things from just moving really fast throughout our whole, days and life, and not giving ourselves, that 1 or 2 seconds just to actually really pause. So that was such a huge component. And for my clients, 100%. And I think that some more than others, because we're all different human beings and we all have different reasonings behind why we're experiencing the symptoms that we are. But yeah, there's a huge group of my clients who nervous system is not the entire thing, but nervous system is a huge component in reducing their symptoms. So yeah, pausing for that small bit. Some of my clients had never done that before. So doing that was so transformative for them. And like we were talking about before, it is so much more than just your gut symptoms. It controls your whole life. So if you're able to give yourself those pauses in the day, imagine how much you can show up for your friends and for your family and for yourself when you're acknowledging how you feel and you're connecting with yourself and your body and what your needs are. Because when we're able to give ourselves that space, our tolerance for things in life, like stress, is higher. Our window of tolerance is bigger. So we're able to tolerate, the stresses that go on with life without having these physiological reactions in our body, and also mentally, like we have more space for those things. And we're not just letting our emotions dominate our whole lives. So I think that was such a huge component for me. And yes, definitely so supportive for a lot of my clients. And if you're listening and you're like, I can't meditate, that's not me. It's like literally 2 breaths in and out when you get out of bed or just before you eat or you're about to brush your teeth. Start there. Like it doesn't have to be, this sitting down thing, which I feel like can be a bit more accessible for some.
Absolutely. It's almost as if, like, along with being a gut health coach, you're also a bit of a life coach because you're kind of telling people how to optimally live all together. So
yeah,
it's super interesting. My mom, it's funny. She's actually practicing the meditation as well.
Oh,
Very
cool.
fortunately, I believe maybe it's because I'm from India, and just in the Eastern culture, meditation has been something, especially in our family, it has been something that everyone practices, everyone learns. Well, maybe not always practice it, but we've always known it. Sometimes in the hustle and bustle of life, as you said, we just like skip it. We're like, forget it. We'll do it later. And sometimes it just gets pushed. So the idea of self care, but my family, a lot of them have taught me over my life that it's very important to have time, especially in the morning, to myself, and having that time to just have like a start to the day, where so like every encounter I have with someone or with any problem or anything external, I have this sense of stoicism, but not even that, just this sense of emotional resilience where nothing really permeates my equilibrium, mental, So I totally resonate with you.
It's amazing. And what a beautiful way to be raised. I think that that is something that we could all instill a little bit more in us. And yeah, my husband's also Fiji Indian, and he's got this, like, he can really tap into that very easily as well. It comes so naturally to him. Whereas for me, I'm like, it just not is not this natural thing that comes into my life. So I think it's really beautiful that there are some cultures out there that have just embedded that into their lives. And what, like, and like, for example, Indians have been around forever and have been doing this for so long, and it works. So yeah, I think that's really cool, and we could all take a leaf out of your book.
Absolutely. And when it comes to women's health, right? And especially the menstruation cycle, I believe I read somewhere early on that a reason why menstruation cycles might be actually very good is because women are actually getting like a monthly feedback loop. Like they're getting feedback from their body, and it kind of tells them, okay, this is this is the status update when it comes to my gut health, and my hormone health. And so it was pretty interesting me reading about that, because in my head, with my very limited knowledge, I always just thought that the cycle is something where it's like, for a few weeks you're kind of just ramping up, and it's a moment of like just temporary pain, and then you have to get through it, and then you move forward. Would you be able to enlighten us about the overall like menstruation cycle and just the science behind it? Because it is something that I'm totally foreign to.
Yeah, yeah. And what an interesting thing to say, because um yes, I feel like you just saying that this morning, I just made a post about PMS, and I was talking about how PMS is not normal. And I see so many clients in clinic who are like, or will be talking about their menstrual cycle, and then they'll be like, oh yeah, and then I just get like a bit of PMS, like the bloating and the headaches and like the sugar cravings and things like that. But that's just, yeah, like that's just PMS. Like everyone gets that. And I'm like, no, they are literally like signals from your body that there are some things that are out of balance. So, like, exactly what you read is so right. I read this book like a while back, and it stuck with me so much. I think it was by Lee Heckman, who's an incredible woman who talks all about hormonal health. She's in Australia, but she said that your period is your report card, your report card throughout the whole month. And so I thought that that was really fascinating, because I was like, that is so true. We do have all of these hormones going on in our body, and they rise and fall throughout different parts of the cycle. And so we have 4 actual phases in our cycle, and every single one of them, different hormones are predominant throughout all of them. And all of those hormones actually can impact our metabolism, can impact our energy levels, our ability to digest things, our like our yeah, so much, our ability to build muscle, our ability to lose weight, our moods. I could literally go on forever. They literally dominate so many things, and it's all in this lead up for ovulation. So basically these four phases of the cycle that we have are in preparation for creating a child. Now, even if we don't want to conceive, ovulation is incredibly important in order for all the other hormones prior, before, and after to take effect, and to it's kind of like this beautiful symphony that works in our body. And so we have estrogen, progesterone, we have a bit of testosterone, which are androgen levels. We call them androgens, but testosterone is the general one. And all of these, like, there's a lot of other hormones at play, but those three are the most important. And they all interact in different ways throughout the cycle. So if we're experiencing just before our ovulation, we should get this rise in estrogen. Now, if we are experiencing already elevated levels of estrogen as a result of toxin exposure, or as a result of, like drinking a lot of alcohol, or a lot of chronic stress, or maybe you have a predisposed condition to something, and then ovulation comes around and estrogen starts to rise, and we already have elevated levels of estrogen, that causes an excess surge of estrogen, for example. And that can give us really intense symptoms. So for some people, they experience really intense bloating and digestive issues when they're going through ovulation. So even if just before your period, you're experiencing in the middle of your cycle, things like that, that can show us, okay, maybe potentially you've got some estrogen dominance going on and you're not detoxifying that excess estrogen. And so we can already get a lot of insight as to, okay, well, maybe this is what's going on mid-cycle for you. And then when we go around to just before our period, we get this rise in progesterone. Progesterone is our relaxing, it's our feel-good hormone. It keeps us really calm. It does help with digestion. But as you can imagine, if that is in excess, if there's too much progesterone, we can get, like, imagine it as a slow calming hormone, we can get things like constipation. We can get really low mood. We can get irritability. We can get exhaustion. So those are just two of the hormones throughout the cycle that, when they're out of balance, can really impact, our well-being and our health and our ability to, have energy to be able to metabolize and absorb nutrients, and the list goes on. So I think that all the phases ideally need to be working optimally, and we can look at these things and see where our symptoms are at. So I think for most people, I would say the first thing to do is to make sure you track your cycle, because it's actually crazy how many women I see who don't even track their cycle, because whether or not your cycle is regular or it's short or it's long, like, they also tell us about what's going on with your hormonal health. And these hormones like estrogen and progesterone, they dominate things like our digestion. So they can be a reason behind why you're experiencing bloating, constipation, diarrhea, headaches, all of those kind of things. So it's important to, and with almost every single woman that I see, that is a system in the body that I will be looking at to understand whether or not that's what is driving their digestive issues. So yeah, it's not something to be overlooked.
Super interesting. So when it comes to these specific two, we mentioned three hormones, but specifically estrogen and progesterone, is it usually the case that there's too much or there's too less? The reason I ask is I'm trying to understand what's like the best course of action then to restore that balance of healthy levels of each.
Yeah. So this can be, very multifactorial and really dependent on the person. But yes, you can definitely have low estrogen and you can definitely have low progesterone. And so you can either be dominant in these hormones or you're not producing enough of these hormones. And either one can cause issues with, like, things like our thyroid. It can cause it could, like for most people who are going through menopause, for example, they'll experience these extreme fluctuations in estrogen, but mostly the estrogen is starting to decrease. And estrogen is really important for our bone metabolism, for our ability to build muscle, for our energy, for fat loss, all of those kind of things. So that's when like those symptoms can start coming up, for an example, and that's low estrogen. So yeah, there's a lot of things that happen there. I think it is really case dependent what is going on with that person. But a few things that I would be looking at is, okay, well, make sure that they're ensuring that they're eating enough nutrients, because, for example, something like fiber binds to estrogen and helps us excrete that out in our stools. So if we're not having adequate amounts of fiber, we're going to struggle to detoxify estrogen. If we're experiencing gut dysbiosis, when we have an imbalance of good versus good or beneficial and not so beneficial bacteria, that's going to affect our ability to regulate estrogen in our gut microbiome. So that's also going to have an impact. So I would be looking at whether or not that person is experiencing dysbiosis, whether or not they're meeting all of their macronutrients. Are they eating enough protein? Because again, protein can be the building blocks of these hormones as well. So they can affect our ability to regulate and produce these hormones. So are you getting in like at least 30 grams of protein per meal? Are you having in a total of 30 grams of fiber a day? Are you making sure that you're eating some healthy fats? Because healthy fats are super important. They're things like salmon and olive oil, nuts and seeds. All of those kind of things are, again, going to really help with our hormonal production. So diet would be a huge one that I'd be looking at, because like excess amounts of sugar and processed foods, like basically anything in a packet, is going to impact our hormonal health. How high is our toxic load? Whether or not our liver is clearing that. So there's a lot of things that I would be looking at. But if you were someone who wasn't going to see a practitioner, I would say the first thing that you want to do is you want to be your own investigator and understand what is going on in your cycle. Pick up on the patterns, because that is so empowering. When you know what is going on in your cycle, you're not like, oh, every time you know that on day 23, you are exhausted, and that is when you get really bloated. And so you can start to pick up on patterns of what's happening in the body. And that can give us an indication of, okay, well, what hormones are high, what hormones are low, and then you can support it by understanding a little bit more about like what's going on for you personally. So yeah, I would be looking at diet, but then supplementation is another way that I would be supporting that. And again, it's so specific on what's going on for that person.
Absolutely. And earlier when we were mentioning like the toxic overload, right, where that could be a cue that, okay, the kidney might not be doing the work that it should be. How is it that we are finding that cue? Is it this testing that we do that's giving us the insight as to our body's ability to detox toxins?
Yeah. Definitely testing is a way to do it, and something that I often do with clients. I'll be looking at like actually checking their liver functioning tests. So like LFTs, I don't know what kind of testing that you have in America, but I would be checking through their pathology and making sure, like seeing where all of their markers are at. But also you can have telltale signs of like liver toxic overload, all of those kind of things, by just checking in with symptoms. Like if you are experiencing an excess of estrogen, for example, or progesterone, or literally any hormone, that means that the liver needs some support. So I would be looking at just focusing on trying to support those detoxification processes in the liver and in the guts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. When it comes to the supplements, I know everyone is unique, right? But are there some that you have seen that you commonly do recommend to your clients?
Yes, I would say I feel like probably everyone you interview would say the same thing, but magnesium. So magnesium is so incredibly important. It's responsible for 500 biochemical reactions in our body. It supports our stress, our nervous system, our digestive functioning, our hormonal health. And most people are deficient in magnesium because we're not drinking enough water, we're chronically stressed. Um, and so those kind of things so magnesium, I would 100% say, and not just any magnesium. If you are someone who is experiencing gut health issues, I would be sticking to a magnesium glycinate. So a magnesium citrate can actually be quite irritable on the gut. So I usually just solely stick to glycinate because sometimes citrate is okay for people, but it's hit and miss. So glycinate is my go-to. And something that I love to give people is curcumin, which is the active compound in turmeric. And it's just anti-inflammatory. It actually feeds all of that beneficial bacteria. Most people who are experiencing gut issues are extremely inflamed. So that is like often, not always, but most of the time, I'll be looking at a really high therapeutic dose of curcumin, which almost always gives people relief because it's so anti-inflammatory. And fish oil. But you know what? Fish oil is a great supplement, but always diet first because it's going to be much more bioavailable when we consume it by the food than if we take a tablet form of it. So I always think try and get in at least 3 pieces of fish or seafood a week. But if not, then I would do a really high dose of fish oil because again, anti-inflammatory, helps with that hormonal health, feeds that beneficial bacteria, feeds the short chain fatty acids, which feed the lining of our gut wall. So it helps with intestinal permeability, that leaky gut picture. That's a really, really beautiful healing one as well. And then one other one is glutamine. But glutamine for me, I don't feel like is a general, like across the line kind of supplement I would be using for everyone. It can cause constipation in high doses. It can be really supportive for like a leaky gut kind of scenario. But if you were going to go for glutamine, you'd want to make sure that that's actually what you're addressing because you might take it and it doesn't really do anything because perhaps maybe your root cause is something a little bit different. But people who do have leaky gut, 5 grams of glutamine every single day has been really transformative. And that's kind of where the science is at as well, that it can be very therapeutic in that dose to support rehealing the lining of the gut wall.
Love it. And when it comes to like herbs, and then also like nowadays there's like these probiotics that are coming into market. What's your take on probiotics in general?
Yeah, I love this probiotic chat. It is going off now, isn't it? Um, and I find a lot of people are taking like these multi-strain probiotics. And something that I would love to spread the word more on is that probiotics, all different strains have different responsibilities in the body and different roles in the body. And every single strain does something different in our bodies. So taking a multi-strain of something that, especially when it's a multi-strain, so the dosages are quite low of all of them, it's not necessarily going to be super supportive for you unless like maybe you're working on general health. But again, like these dosages are really small. And what are those strains specifically doing? And also people who are experiencing gut issues, it can worsen our symptoms. So if we're experiencing something like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or any sort of kind of bacterial overgrowth, perhaps even candida, or parasite or something, sometimes it can feed this overgrowth and worsen your symptoms and cause more bacterial overgrowth, which is what you're trying to prevent. So have a look out for those strains and understand exactly what those strains are doing in your body. And know that they're only short-lived in the gut. So they don't colonize the gut. They're there and they help to crowd out other bacteria in the gut microbiome, but they don't live there. So they don't, they're not like recolonizing the whole gut. The way to recolonize your gut and to actually increase that beneficial bacteria is prebiotics, not probiotics. And that can be found in fruit and vegetables, or something like PHGG, which is a partially hydrolyzed guar gum. But yeah, it really depends on what's going on for you, but make sure you are understanding the strains before just like consuming a random probiotic.
Absolutely. And given someone does have, proper guidance, and through research, they've found that a supplement, whether it's an antimicrobial or it's like curcumin or a probiotic, they have found that, okay, this is probably good for my specific conditions. How long should someone give to like a supplement to see if it's efficacious or not for them?
That's such a great question. I think all supplements are different, and it depends on your symptoms as well. But I would say, like, as a really general guideline, like 3 months is kind of what I stick at. But every supplement is different. And if something is worsening your symptoms, don't just keep going. I like, for most, as a general guideline, if it's worsening your symptoms, stop it, because it's worsening your symptoms, and that's kind of just not what you need. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bella. You taught us so much. Thank you so much for all your time.
Thank
I
you so
wanted to
much.
Absolutely. The pleasure is 100% all mine. So generous of you for sharing your time with us. I wanted to ask, as a final note, if there was someone who is viewing this beautiful conversation and might not have a lot of hope when it comes to their gut issues, what is a message you'd like to give them?
Something that I like to say to my clients all the time is that there is always something that you can do, and there are always ways that you can feel better. So whether or not you feel like right now you might be at a dead end, know that there is so many opportunities out there for you to feel better, and there is never an ending. It's not like there's always something that you can do. So it is a matter of like, keep going with what you're doing, keep trialing and error. I know that might be exhausting for you at the moment, but just know that there is answers for you. And I believe that everyone can heal and feel better. There are always ways that you can feel better.
Love it. Love it so much. Bella, if people want to learn more about you, where can people find you and hopefully get to work with you?
Yeah, amazing. So I am on Instagram, Enlivenwell Nutrition. I am also on TikTok, but really I'm so bad at using TikTok. So just stick to the Instagram, Enlivenwell Nutrition. You can jump on there. There's my website, which is enlivenwellnutrition.com.au. And yeah, don't be shy. Please reach out in my DMs, have a conversation, even if it's just a hi. Any questions or anything, I absolutely love to talk about all of this stuff. So you'll make my day just jumping in there and saying hello. I love to reach out to other like-minded people as well. And if you've made it to the end of this podcast, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bella.